don't particularly apply to me here, like cannabis community. I wouldn't say that's what I'm part of. And cannabis is nice, okay for some, but hasn't been that nice for my families. But so these don't exactly apply particularly to me, but it says on the tin, Legalised Cannabis Alliance, and that's what I'm about, talking about legalising cannabis. So I hope that's okay. I'll just start by briefly taking this chance to mention the mental health bill. There's an early day motion about the draft mental health bill. Some of it says, this House agrees with the Mental Health Alliance, that's a whole group of different people, that any further Mental Health Act must provide a legal right to assessment, care and treatment, and that people who have a mental disorder should only put under compulsion as a last resort and when they have lost ability to make decisions for themselves. The proposed Mental Health Act that this government's putting out wants to take away that basic human right. So if you're interested, look up mental health or mind on the internet and write to your MP. That may seem irrelevant, but it is relevant. Recently, my son's got schizophrenia, and it looks like it's some relationship to his cannabis use. And recently I wrote an open letter to the mental health charity SANE, in which I challenged them because they want to use this information to use the stuff about mental health and cannabis to reclassify it back to a Class B, and I was challenging on it. I'll come to that at the end, but I've had a few reply to this, and a lot of them have been supportive. Here's one that wasn't supportive. It said, well, it looks as if schizophrenics get worse. If it looks as if schizophrenics get worse, it's best that they abstain, but try telling them that. It's something that has to be taken on board by carers, and they can leave the rest of us alone. I don't know what you think of that, but I would say disability of all different sorts is a concern for everybody. Okay, anyway, as I said, I'm one of those carers. My son's got schizophrenia. It started after heavy use of cannabis when he was a teenager. And now, when he uses it, and he does a lot, his mental health does deteriorate visibly and rapidly. And it does seem, from the research, that people with schizophrenia who have bad reactions to cannabis, like he does, and I accept that an awful lot of people don't, are the same people that were into using it heavily at the onset of the illness. Okay, so it has been known for a long time that for some people who have schizophrenia, cannabis can make them worse. And new evidence suggests that for some people, heavy use of cannabis can increase the chances of getting it, particularly children. And notice, I meant to anyway, pauses then. I'm not, in fact, saying that cannabis causes schizophrenia, but for some people it can be an important contributory factor. So don't jump at me saying you're saying it causes. I'm not saying that at all. But, there is a link, and it's not a link we can just ignore. I don't think we can anyway. I certainly can't. Okay, and whether or not you believe that research, and I know lots of people don't for various reasons, they say it's biased and it's coming from different points of view and they want to prove that. Whether or not you believe it, it's in the public agenda, and if you're a candidate, people will be asking you that, and I would say it's not enough to say, oh, it's okay, look at tobacco, look at other things, it's there, and people are going to be asked. Parents are on the side of caution. If they're worried about their children, they're going to be worried, and if it's something they know nothing about, they don't know or particularly interested in cannabis, they're not going to really go for you unless you've actually got something positive to say and can use that stuff that's coming out of research to show that legalisation is a good thing. That's what I think anyway. The problem at the moment is the government is using the new research as a justification for not legalising cannabis. So whether or not you're sceptical about these findings, the very fact that the government is using it to justify prohibition is wrong. Okay, just before I go into the letter I wrote, here's two quotes from researchers. There was a recent study that came out from Holland that was making a link that it looks like cannabis, if there's a mental health risk in the family, cannabis can trigger off a psychosis that might not have happened at the time or it might have happened later. Right, and one of the authors of this, Jim van Os, said, and I'll just read this out. Jim van Os, a professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Neuropsychology at Maastricht University in the Netherlands, where cannabis is legal, said a ban would be hard. It's going to be very difficult to tell the whole Dutch population to stop using cannabis because it's bad and you will develop psychotic illness. Perhaps it's better to say that if you have a family history or mental instability, you're perhaps particularly at risk of negative consequences of cannabis use. The way to get the message across is for young people to talk about the issues and have more social control among themselves rather than a big brother approach. Okay, so that's one of the researchers said that. Another one, Zerin Atakan in this country, is actually very supportive. Honorary Senior Lecturer at the National Psychosis Unit of the Institute of Psychiatry said cannabis had medicinal uses and, like alcohol, was not a problem in moderation. She pointed to the different effects on the brain of two compounds it contained, THC and CBD. Cannabis high in THC was stronger and potentially more dangerous, while CBD may be responsible for its beneficial effects. She said, I personally believe it should be legalised so it is tightly regulated, and it says on the packet how much THC is in it. She said, at the moment it's worse because people think it's legalised and there is, we got to the last page, confusion, it's the hands of the dealers. That is not a good situation. Okay, so it's not all as simple. And that's really the point I'm making. It's a complicated, cannabis is complicated and simplistic arguments don't work. Okay, and again, the thing about the CBD, it looks like CBD can actually work as an antipsychotic, which THC can make people with schizophrenia more ill. CBD possibly makes them better, so never simplify anything, that's what I'm saying. Okay, so that's what I was going to say. This is the letter I wrote to Marjorie Rollis, the Chief Executive of SANE. I came to this from not just being an angry mother, and I was a very angry mother, because I just felt that nobody had supported us, I didn't know anything about it. I thought cannabis was great, I thought it was fine and harmless, and when my son was actually ill, got to the hospital, and the doctors all said, no, it's really dangerous, you shouldn't have been doing that, and I didn't know, and I just think it was a big barrier to sort of people talking together and information. Okay, so I'm not coming here to be divisive. I hope I'm not anyway. Okay, so this is the letter I wrote, and there's nothing... If you want to take anything from that letter, it's on the UK CIA website. So is it okay if I just read it out? More or less. Okay, on Saturday, 29th of January, this is to Marjorie Wallace, Chief Executive of SANE, and she didn't answer me directly. She got somebody else to, which is on there as well. She just said what you'd think they'd say, actually. On Saturday, 29th of January, you ran a press release in which you said, we would urge the government to reverse its decision on classification urgently, backing up with a multi-million-pound education awareness campaign on the dangers of cannabis for the young people with whose brains are developing. And I took this off the net and it's rubbed the last bit out, so I can't quite read it out. I didn't know that. And I said, I'm pleased that a mental health charity wants to publicise the mental health risks of cannabis, but disappointed that you have chosen to do so in such an ill-informed and harmful way that will have the opposite effect to what you intend. I'm the parent of a young man with schizophrenia, which developed after heavy use of skunk as a teenager. I didn't know when he became ill that the risks associated with cannabis use. And I said it's very important to get across the potential health risks for some, in particular teenagers, that cannabis can have for some. I absolutely agree with you that there needs to be education, but reclassifying it back to B is not the way to do this. If health messages are given in the context of telling people they shouldn't be doing it, it won't be believed. If you want to reduce the potential harm reduction from... If you want to reduce the potential harm from cannabis use, it's important people have the information about its risk, and then it's up to them, armed with this knowledge, whether or not they follow the advice. And then I said, by linking a health message with a prohibition message, all you are doing is alienating the people that you want to inform, and the exercise becomes pointless. Furthermore, and this is what I've discovered from hanging around the internet for the last year, the message about the mental health risks from cannabis are less likely to be believed and taken seriously if you talk about increasing punishments for use. Many cannabis users are sceptical about the findings about the risks of cannabis because it's seen as just another reason the government is using to keep it illegal. And don't forget that this government is still dragging its feet over allowing people who need it as a medicine to use it. This is not a situation that builds trust. Another, because many don't have the experience of the effect that it does have on some people's mental health. And cannabis is complex and there are different types. You could also have health benefits for some people. Ignoring others' experience is not beneficial. because it's only presented as a reason not to use it. It's not presented as showing how to use it safely with sensible harm reduction measures such as age limits, which can't be done because it's illegal. Information show that people choose to use cannabis so you can use it in a way that takes in account of the risks, and working together to find ways of protecting children because of the particular vulnerability on their developing brains, but also to keep them safe from the dangers of the illegal market. I haven't got the answer to children, but just to keep it at the forefront that it is an issue. I don't think you can just say, oh, you can't tell them any children. I think they need to know there are risks and somehow get the message through to them that it's best not to. Outright banning doesn't inform. I am totally opposed to any argument for legalisation that claims cannabis is harmless, but supportive of any that wants legalisation of it for safe, informed use. Through many discussions with cannabis users and campaigners and message boards, I have observed that the debate is changing. More and more are looking for harm reduction measures. It makes sense to work with people and not against them. For a health campaign group like SANE to demand move to Class B works to alienate people they wish to inform. I've said that twice. However much money is put into leaflets and public information campaigns within the context of prohibition is going to be treated with scepticism, or even worse, ridicule. The damage done by the reefness madness stuff in the 30s is still with us now. It makes it very difficult to get clear messages across about safe use. For instance, the statement that SANE made about, for vulnerable people, especially teenagers, the innocent spliff in the playground or chilling out could trigger a journey of lifelong disintegration. This is emotive language, it isn't factual, it isn't like that. It isn't the vulnerable people are just going to go bonk like that. It doesn't happen like that, but some people certainly are more at risk. And for them to use language like that, it doesn't get anybody anyway. This is just emotive language, it isn't factual, and not in any way going to help the vulnerable people you wish to help. The fact that heavy use of cannabis, particularly strong strains, increases significantly, increases the risk of developing schizophrenia, and that's much higher for teenagers. So, Marjorie, if you really want to have an effective health information campaign, and I would support you in doing so, you need to show that you have great awareness of the issues you have shown by your statement. Reclassifying Class B would be a ridiculous, damaging move that wouldn't benefit anybody. Okay, so that's what I said to her, and they did answer briefly, but there has been other letters, so look it up, and you're welcome to pinch anybody or challenge anybody or anything on it. But that was quite scary for me to do, so